The stars looked the same as they always did in Sector 7, cold and distant against the black of space. Admiral Kai Min stood on the bridge of his flagship Eternal Dominance and watched the patrol ships move in perfect formation around him. His reptilian eyes swept across the displays that showed nothing but empty space for light years in every direction. This was how it had been for 300 years, since the Galactic Dominion took control of known space. Peace through power, order through fear, and complete control over every living being in the galaxy. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of the ship's engines and the occasional beep from the sensor stations. Kai Min's scales caught the blue light from the displays as he turned to check on his crew. The Vorthak had ruled this sector for decades, and nothing ever happened here. The Outer Rim was considered the safest posting in the fleet because no one was stupid enough to challenge the Dominion's might. Any species that tried was either enslaved or destroyed, just like the humans had been 2 centuries ago. Sensor operator Thelvas sat at his station running the daily scans of the sector. His long fingers moved across the controls with practiced ease as he checked each grid square for any signs of activity. Pirates sometimes tried to hide in the asteroid fields, but they were easy to find and destroy. The Dominion's sensors could detect a single ship from 10 systems away. Nothing could hide from their technology, and nothing could escape their justice. The morning patrol was routine until Thelvas noticed something strange on his screen. A small blip appeared for just a few seconds before disappearing completely. He ran the scan again, but found nothing. The operator frowned and increased the sensor range, thinking it might be a system error. Space debris sometimes caused false readings, but this had looked different. The signature was too clean and too organized to be random junk floating in the void. Admiral Kai Min noticed the operator's confusion and walked over to the sensor station. "Report," he said in his deep voice that carried the authority of someone who had never been questioned or disobeyed. "Sir, I detected a vessel signature at grid 77 Alpha for exactly 3.7 seconds before it vanished," Thelvas reported while pulling up the recorded data. "The signature doesn't match anything in our database. It appeared to be roughly frigate-sized, but the energy readings were unlike anything I've seen before." The Admiral studied the display with interest. In 3 decades of service, he had never encountered technology that wasn't already cataloged in the Dominion's vast records. Every species in the galaxy had been contacted, conquered, or destroyed. There were no unknown vessels left to discover. "Run a full-spectrum analysis on the signature and compare it against every known ship design in the database," he ordered. While Thelvas worked on the analysis, Admiral Kai Min returned to his command chair and opened a communication channel. To his escort ships. The patrol formation included 6 destroyers and 12 frigates spread across a wide area to provide maximum sensor coverage. "All ships report status," he commanded. The responses came back quickly from most of the fleet, but 3 destroyers failed to respond. The communication officer tried to contact the missing ships multiple times, but received only silence. Admiral Kai Min felt the first stirring of concern as he realized that 3 of his most powerful warships had simply stopped responding to hails. "Sir," called out the tactical officer, "I'm not reading the destroyer's Bright Sword, Iron Fist, or Stellar Hammer on sensors anymore. They were in formation just minutes ago, but now they're completely gone." Admiral Kai Min's eyes narrowed as he processed this information. Ships didn't just disappear without leaving some trace behind. Even if they had suffered catastrophic engine failures, they would still show up on sensors as debris fields. "Send probe drones to their last known positions immediately," he ordered. The probe drones launched from the flagship and raced toward the coordinates where the 3 destroyers had been patrolling. What they found made no sense to anyone on the bridge. There was no debris, no energy signatures, and no signs of battle. The 3 ships had simply ceased to exist as if they had never been there at all. Before Admiral Kai Min could process this impossible situation, Thelvas suddenly straightened at his sensor station. "Sir, the unknown vessel has appeared again, bearing 28 Mark 7, distance approximately 50,000 kilometers." On screen, the Admiral commanded as he leaned forward in his chair. The main display showed an image that defied everything. Admiral Kai Min knew about starship design. The vessel appeared to be roughly the size of a heavy cruiser, but its hull seemed to shift and blur as if it existed in multiple places at the same time. The ship's outline was clear one moment and ghostly the next, flickering between solid matter and something that looked almost transparent. "What in the name of the eternal dark is that thing?" whispered the tactical officer as he stared at the impossible sight. The unknown ship hung motionless in space for nearly 30 seconds, long enough for the Dominion sensors to gather detailed readings. The energy signatures coming from the vessel were unlike anything in their database. The ship seemed to be powered by technology that operated on principles the Dominion had never encountered. Most disturbing of all, the vessel appeared to exist in multiple dimensional phases simultaneously, as if it was only partially present in normal space. Admiral Kai Min recovered from his shock and immediately went into combat mode. "All ships, battle stations, target the unknown vessel and prepare to fire on my command." The remaining ships in the patrol fleet moved into attack formation with practiced efficiency. Weapons systems powered up and targeting computers locked onto the strange vessel. For a moment, it seemed like the Dominion would finally get answers about this mysterious intruder. Then the impossible happened again. The unknown ship simply vanished, disappearing from sensors as completely as if it had never existed. At the exact same moment, two more of Admiral Kai Min's ships began broadcasting emergency signals. The frigates Dancing Star and Swift Victory were reporting massive internal damage despite the fact that no enemy weapons had been fired. "This is Dancing Star!" came a panicked voice over the communication system. "We have hull breaches on every deck, but I don't understand how. There are no impact craters and no signs of external damage. It's like something tore us apart from the inside." The Swift Victory's captain reported similar impossible damage. Critical systems throughout both ships had been destroyed by some kind of energy weapon that had somehow bypassed their shields and armor completely. Both vessels were losing life support and requesting immediate evacuation. Admiral Kai Min watched, in growing horror as two more of his ships began to break apart in space. The hulls of both frigates were developing cracks that spread like spiderwebs across their surfaces. Emergency pods began launching as the crews abandoned their dying ships. Within minutes, both vessels exploded in brilliant flashes of light that briefly illuminated the surrounding darkness. The Admiral's mind raced as he tried to understand what was happening. 5 ships had been destroyed or disabled without the enemy firing a single visible weapon. The unknown vessel had technology that could bypass every defensive system the Dominion had developed over 3 centuries of conquest. Whatever species had built that ship possessed capabilities that made them more dangerous than anything the galaxy had ever seen. "Send an immediate priority message to High Command," Admiral Kai Min ordered. "Report unknown hostile vessel with advanced stealth and weapons technology. Recommend immediate reinforcement of all Outer Rim sectors." As the communication officer began transmitting the emergency report, Thelvas called out from his sensor station. "Sir, I'm detecting multiple phase shifts in the area where the unknown vessel disappeared. The energy readings suggest it's still here, but existing in some kind of altered dimensional state." Admiral Kai Min stared at the empty space where his ships had died and realized that everything the Dominion believed about their technological superiority had just been proven wrong. Somewhere in the galaxy, an enemy had developed weapons and defenses that made the mighty Dominion fleet look like primitive savages throwing rocks at the stars. The Phantom had struck without warning and vanished without a trace, leaving behind only questions and fear. The small planet called Haven looked like nothing special from orbit. Just another dead rock floating in the darkness between the stars. No one from the Galactic Dominion had bothered to visit this world for over 50 years because their sensors showed it was lifeless and had no valuable resources worth taking. That was exactly how Captain Do Hyun wanted it to appear. Deep beneath the surface of Haven, hidden in caves that had been carefully modified and expanded over decades, the last free humans in the galaxy lived and worked in secret. The underground facility stretched for kilometers through the planet's crust, housing workshops, laboratories, living quarters, and the most important thing of all, the shipyard where humanity's greatest achievement waited in the shadows. Captain Do Hyun stood in the main hangar looking up at the Ghost of Terra with pride and determination burning in his eyes. The ship was beautiful in a way that few people would understand because its beauty came not from elegant curves or bright colors, but from the deadly purpose built into every component. 200 years of slavery under the Dominion had taught humanity many painful lessons, but the most important one was this. Survival required more than just hiding, it required the ability to strike back. Engineer So-Jin climbed down from the ship's hull where she had been running final checks on the phase shift drive systems. Her hands were covered in grease, and her face showed the exhaustion that came from working 18-hour days for the past 3 months. The phase shift technology was the most complex system ever created by human hands, and keeping it running required constant attention to thousands of delicate components. The quantum resonance chambers are operating at 98% efficiency, So-Jin reported as she wiped her hands on a cloth. I've calibrated the dimensional displacement matrix to allow for rapid phase transitions without destabilizing the ship's molecular structure. We can shift between normal space and phase space in less than 2 seconds. Captain Do-hyun nodded with satisfaction. The phase shift drive was the heart of their rebellion against the Dominion. The technology allowed the Ghost of Terra to exist, partially outside normal space, making it invisible to enemy sensors and capable of passing through solid matter like a ghost walking through walls. It had taken decades to develop and perfect, built from salvaged alien technology combined with human ingenuity and desperation. Dr. Na Young emerged from the ship's laboratory section carrying a datapad filled with technical specifications. As the chief scientist of the hidden colony, she had spent the last 20 years studying every piece of Dominion technology they could get their hands on. Wreckage from crashed ships, stolen sensor arrays, and equipment smuggled out by human slaves had all been carefully analyzed and reverse-engineered. The weapon systems are ready for deployment, Dr. Na Young announced. I've configured the phase cannons to fire energy bursts that exist in dimensional space rather than normal space. The weapons can penetrate any known shield technology because they bypass the barriers entirely by existing in a different dimensional phase. The implications of this breakthrough were staggering. For 300 years, the Dominion had conquered every species they encountered because their shields and armor were impenetrable to conventional weapons. No one had ever developed technology that could simply ignore those defenses by attacking from a different dimensional plane. The Ghost of Terra could destroy enemy ships from the inside out while remaining completely invisible and untouchable. Communications. Officer Taeho looked up from his station where he had been monitoring Dominion transmissions from across the sector. His face showed excitement as he gestured for the others to join him. Captain, you need to hear this. I've intercepted emergency communications from a Dominion patrol fleet in Sector 7. They're reporting attacks by an unknown vessel that appears and disappears without warning. Captain Do-hyun felt a surge of satisfaction as he listened to the panicked Dominion communications. Their first strike had been successful beyond their wildest hopes. 5 enemy ships destroyed, and the survivors had no idea what had attacked them or how to defend against future strikes. The psychological impact would be just as important as the physical damage because the Dominion had never faced an enemy they couldn't understand or defeat. They're calling us a phantom, Taeho continued with a grin. Admiral Kai-min is requesting massive reinforcements and reporting that his fleet faced technology beyond anything in their database. High Command is treating this as a potential first contact situation with an unknown alien species. The irony was perfect. The Dominion had spent 2 centuries believing that humanity was extinct, wiped out by their own superior technology and military might. The last humans had been forced into slavery and scattered across the galaxy while their homeworld was strip-mined and abandoned. Now those same humans had returned with technology that made the mighty Dominion look like primitive children playing with toys. Dr. Na Young pulled up holographic displays showing the technical specifications of their weapons and defensive systems. The beauty of our technology is that it combines human creativity with alien science in ways the Dominion never imagined possible. They think in terms of bigger guns and stronger armor, but we've learned to think in terms of dimensional manipulation and quantum mechanics. The Ghost of Terra represented more than just advanced technology. It was proof that human intelligence and adaptability could overcome any obstacle. While other species had been content to accept defeat when the Dominion conquered them, humans had spent centuries learning, growing, and preparing for the day when they could fight back. Every component of the ship had been designed and built by people who understood that this might be their only chance for freedom. Engineer So-Jin brought up the ship's technical specifications on the main display. The hull is constructed from a hybrid metal that exists partially in phase space, making it nearly indestructible while maintaining the ability to shift between dimensions. The engines use controlled quantum tunneling to achieve faster-than-light travel without creating the energy signatures that Dominion sensors normally detect. Captain Do-hyun studied the readouts and felt pride in what his people had accomplished. The 12 crew members of the Ghost of Terra were all that remained of the secret research facility that the Dominion thought they had destroyed decades ago. They had survived by hiding in the deepest caves of Haven while working tirelessly to build the weapon that would begin humanity's return to the stars. "We're not just fighting for revenge," Captain Do-hyun told his crew. "We're fighting to find and liberate every human slave still scattered across Dominion space. Our people have suffered for 2 centuries, but they've never stopped hoping for freedom. We're going to give them that freedom one ship at a time." Weapons specialist Ji-woo finished loading the ship's arsenal and reported that all systems were ready for combat operations. The Ghost of Terra carried enough firepower to destroy a small fleet, but more importantly, it carried the hopes and dreams of an entire species that refused to accept defeat. Every weapon had been designed specifically to exploit weaknesses in Dominion technology that no one else had ever discovered. Navigation Officer Hya-jin plotted courses to 17 different star systems, where intelligence suggested human slaves might still be held. The missions would be dangerous because they required penetrating deep into Dominion space and locating facilities that were heavily guarded and well hidden. But the phase shift technology gave them advantages that no previous rescue mission had ever possessed. Medical Officer Woo Sung prepared the ship's medical bay to treat rescued slaves who had suffered under Dominion cruelty for decades. Many of the people they hoped to save would be broken in body and spirit, requiring careful treatment and rehabilitation before they could contribute to the growing rebellion. But every person they rescued would be proof that humanity still existed, and still fought for its freedom. The crew gathered on the bridge as Captain Do-hyun activated the ship's main systems. The Ghost of Terra came alive with the soft hum of quantum processors and the gentle vibration of phase shift generators warming up. For the first time in 200 years, humans were about to take the offensive in a war that had begun with their enslavement and would end with their liberation. "All stations report ready," Captain Do-hyun announced as he settled into the command chair. "Begin phase shift sequence and prepare for departure. It's time to show the Dominion that humans are not extinct. We're just getting started." Admiral Kai-min stood in the war room of the Dominion Fleet Command Station and stared at the tactical display showing the locations of every attack by the Phantom vessel. 7 strikes in 3 weeks across 4 different sectors, each one more devastating than the last. The unknown enemy had destroyed 23 ships and killed over 15,000 Dominion personnel without suffering a single confirmed hit in return. Intelligence Officer Vextar moved between multiple data screens, analyzing every piece of information they had gathered about their mysterious attacker. His insectoid features showed the strain of working without sleep for days as he tried to find patterns in what seemed like random strikes. The Phantom appeared to have no fixed base of operations and attacked targets that showed no obvious strategic value beyond the psychological impact of the destruction. "The attack patterns suggest we're dealing with a single vessel operating independently," Vextar reported while highlighting the tactical data. "The time intervals between strikes are too short for multiple ships and too long for a single vessel using conventional faster-than-light travel. Whatever propulsion system they're using operates on principles we don't understand." Admiral Kai-min studied the evidence with growing frustration. The Galactic Dominion had conquered the known galaxy through superior technology and overwhelming force. But this enemy seemed immune to both advantages. Their ships appeared and disappeared at will, struck without warning, and vanished before any counterattack could be launched. It was like fighting shadows that could reach out and destroy real objects while remaining untouchable themselves. "What species could have developed this technology without our knowledge?" Admiral Kai-min asked while pacing around the tactical display. "We've cataloged every intelligent race in the galaxy, and none of them possess anything approaching these capabilities." Vextar pulled up files showing the energy signatures detected during the Phantom attacks. The weapon systems appear to use some form of dimensional manipulation that allows them to bypass our shields and armor completely. The damage patterns suggest the enemy weapons exist partially outside normal space, which would explain how they can penetrate our defenses. The implications were terrifying to contemplate. Dominion military doctrine was based on the principle that their defensive technology was impenetrable and their offensive capabilities were overwhelming. If an enemy had developed weapons that could ignore those defenses completely, then every advantage the Dominion possessed became meaningless. 3 centuries of technological supremacy had been rendered obsolete by an unknown enemy in a matter of weeks. High Command had already ordered the mobilization of 3 additional fleets to hunt down the Phantom vessel, but Admiral Kai Min suspected that conventional tactics would be useless against an enemy that could exist partially outside normal space. They needed new strategies and new technologies to fight something that defied every rule of warfare they had ever learned. Meanwhile, the Ghost of Terra materialized in normal space near a Dominion supply convoy traveling through the Nexus trade route. Captain Do Hyun studied the enemy formation through the ship's sensors while his crew prepared for their most ambitious attack yet. The convoy consisted of 12 cargo haulers protected by 6 escort frigates, carrying supplies and equipment to Dominion colonies in the Outer Rim territories. Engineer So Jin monitored the phase shift generators as they maintained the ship's existence between dimensions. "Phase stability is holding at optimal levels," she reported. "We can maintain partial phase displacement for up to 40 minutes before requiring a cool-down period." The tactical advantage of phase technology was enormous because it allowed the Ghost of Terra to observe enemy positions while remaining completely invisible to their sensors. Captain Do Hyun could plan attacks with perfect knowledge of enemy deployments, while the Dominion forces remained unaware that they were being watched. Dr. Nae Young had spent the previous week developing new weapon configurations specifically, designed to maximize psychological impact on Dominion forces. "I've modified the phase cannons to create cascading failures in enemy power systems," she explained, while showing Captain Do Hyun the technical specifications. "Instead of destroying ships immediately, the weapons will cause progressive system failures that give the crews time to realize they're helpless before their ships are destroyed." The psychological warfare aspect of their campaign was just as important as the physical destruction they caused. Each attack was designed to spread fear and confusion through Dominion ranks, while demonstrating that their supposedly superior technology could be defeated by an enemy they couldn't see, understand, or fight back against. Weapons Specialist Jiwoo targeted the convoy's escort ships first, focusing on the frigates that posed the greatest threat to the operation. "Phase cannons are locked onto primary targets," he reported. "Firing sequence ready for execution on your command." Captain Do Hyun gave the order to attack and watched as the Ghost of Terra's weapons fired energy bursts that existed partially in dimensional space. The phantom beams passed through the Dominion ship's shields and armor as if they weren't there, striking critical systems deep inside the enemy vessels. Power cores began destabilizing, life support systems failed, and weapon arrays went offline as the phase energy disrupted the molecular bonds holding the ships together. The Dominion escort frigates tried desperately to locate their attacker, but their sensors showed only empty space. Emergency communications filled the radio channels as ship captains reported impossible damage from weapons that seemed to appear from nowhere. The escort fleet fired wildly in all directions, hoping to hit an enemy they couldn't see or detect. Communications. Officer Taeho intercepted the panicked transmissions from the convoy and relayed them to the rest of the crew. "They're calling for immediate reinforcements and reporting attacks by ghost weapons that bypass all defensive systems. The convoy commander is ordering full retreat, but half his escort ships are already disabled." The Ghost of Terra moved through the convoy like a predator stalking helpless prey, systematically destroying escort vessels while leaving the cargo haulers untouched. Captain Do Hyun had decided that destroying supply ships would have less psychological impact than disabling them and allowing the crews to spread stories about the phantom attacker throughout the Dominion fleet. Dr. Na Young monitored the effectiveness of their new weapon configurations and noted with satisfaction that the phase cannons were causing exactly the type of progressive failures she had designed. "The enemy ships are experiencing cascade failures in all major systems," she reported. "Their crews will have approximately 10 minutes to abandon ship before the power cores reach critical overload." The timing was perfect because it gave the Dominion crews enough time to realize that their ships were doomed, but not enough time to mount any effective defense or counterattack. The psychological impact of being helpless against an invisible enemy would spread through the fleet faster than any official reports could travel. Navigation Officer Hye Jin monitored the surrounding space for signs of Dominion reinforcements, while maintaining precise positioning for rapid phase shift escape. Long-range sensors detect 3 Dominion destroyer squadrons converging on our position, she reported. Estimated arrival time is 18 minutes. Captain Do Hyun decided to complete the destruction of the convoy before the reinforcements arrived. The Ghost of Terra's phase cannons eliminated the remaining escort frigates in rapid succession, while the cargo haulers launched every escape pod they carried. Within 15 minutes, 12 supply ships were drifting powerless in space, while their crews floated helplessly in emergency pods, waiting for rescue. The final phase of the attack involved a demonstration that would ensure the story of this battle reached every corner of the Dominion fleet. Captain Do Hyun ordered the Ghost of Terra to partially phase back into normal space, just long enough for the enemy sensors to detect them. For 30 seconds, the Phantom vessel appeared on every sensor screen in the convoy, allowing the survivors to see exactly what had destroyed their ships. All enemy vessels neutralized, Weapons Specialist Ji-woo reported. No casualties among our crew and minimal damage to ship systems. The Ghost of Terra vanished back into phase space just as the Dominion reinforcements arrived to find 12 destroyed ships and hundreds of escape pods floating in the debris field. The survivors would tell stories about the Phantom vessel that could appear and disappear at will while wielding weapons that made Dominion defensive technology completely useless. Admiral Kai Min received the reports from the convoy attack with growing alarm. The Phantom vessel was becoming bolder and more aggressive with each strike, while demonstrating capabilities that suggested its technology was far more advanced than anything in the Dominion's arsenal. The implications were clear. They were fighting an enemy that possessed the tactical advantage in every possible way. "Send orders to all fleet commanders," Admiral Kai Min commanded. "No ships are to travel alone, and all convoys must have minimum destroyer escort protection. We're dealing with an enemy that can strike anywhere without warning." Admiral Kai Min sat alone in his private quarters, staring at the audio recordings that had changed everything he believed about the war against the Phantom vessel. Intelligence Officer Vexus Tar had managed to isolate communication signals from the mysterious attacker during their latest raid, and the voices speaking were unmistakably human. The species that the Dominion had declared extinct 2 centuries ago was not only alive, but had returned with technology that surpassed anything the galaxy's greatest empire had ever created. The recordings played again and again in his mind as he tried to process the impossible truth. Human voices coordinating attacks, human voices discussing tactical strategies, human voices speaking with confidence and determination that should have been broken long ago. The Dominion had spent decades teaching its citizens that humans were primitive creatures useful only for manual labor and dangerous only when they bred too quickly. Every textbook and historical record claimed that humanity had been completely subjugated or eliminated, but the evidence was undeniable. The Phantom vessel was human-built and human-operated, which meant that everything the Dominion believed about human capabilities was a lie. The species they had dismissed as intellectually inferior had somehow developed technology that made Dominion science look primitive by comparison. 300 years of conquest and control had been built on a foundation of lies and ignorance. Admiral Kai Min activated his personal communication system and sent an encrypted message to High Command requesting immediate access to classified historical records about the human homeworld and the final campaigns of subjugation. If humans had survived and rebuilt their civilization somewhere in the galaxy, then the Dominion faced a threat unlike anything they had ever encountered before. Aboard the Ghost of Terra, Captain Do Hyun studied star charts showing the locations of 17 confirmed human slave colonies scattered across Dominion space. Intelligence gathered from their raids had revealed that thousands of humans still existed in forced labor camps, mining facilities, and agricultural settlements throughout the Empire. Most of them probably believed they were the last survivors of their species, unaware that free humans still existed and were fighting to liberate them. Navigation Officer Hyojin plotted courses to each colony while calculating the risks and challenges involved in reaching facilities deep inside heavily defended Dominion territory. "The closest target is the mining colony on Kepler 7th, she reported, while highlighting the star system on the display. It's located in Sector 12 and protected by a standard defense garrison of 6 frigates and 2 destroyers. The mission would be the most dangerous operation they had attempted yet because it required not just destroying enemy ships, but actually landing on a planetary surface and extracting prisoners from a fortified facility. The Ghost of Terra had been designed for hit-and-run attacks against ships in space, not ground assault operations against heavily defended installations. Dr. Na Young had spent the past week developing new applications for their phase technology that would allow the ship to land on planetary surfaces while remaining partially invisible to ground-based sensors. "I've configured the phase shift generators to create a localized distortion field around the ship," she explained while showing the technical specifications. "We can maintain partial phase displacement, even while operating in atmosphere, making us effectively invisible to most detection systems." Engineer So Jin expressed concerns about the additional strain that atmospheric operations would place on the phase shift generators. "The quantum resonance chambers weren't designed for extended operation in high-gravity environments," she warned. "We can maintain phase stability for maybe 2 hours before risking permanent damage to the system." Captain Do Hyun understood the risks, but also knew that rescuing human slaves was the entire purpose of their rebellion against the Dominion. The Ghost of Terra existed not just to strike back at their oppressors, but to prove that humanity still survived and still fought for freedom. Every person they rescued would be living proof that the Dominion's control over the galaxy was not absolute. Medical Officer Wu Sung prepared the ship's medical facilities to treat slaves who had suffered decades of abuse and malnutrition under Dominion control. Many of the people they hoped to rescue would be physically and psychologically damaged, requiring careful treatment before they could contribute to the growing resistance movement. But every rescued human would also carry knowledge about other slave facilities and Dominion operations that could help plan future liberation missions. Communications Officer Tae-ho intercepted transmissions from the Kepler-7 colony and discovered that the facility held over 300 human slaves working in dangerous mining operations. The slaves were housed in underground barracks and guarded by automated security systems that would make any rescue attempt extremely challenging. But the intelligence also revealed shift schedules and transport patterns that could be exploited by a sufficiently advanced infiltration team. Weapons specialist Ji Woo developed new tactical approaches for dealing with ground-based defenses, while minimizing the risk of casualties among the human prisoners. The phase cannons can be configured for precision strikes against security installations without causing the massive explosions that might collapse the mining tunnels where the slaves are working, he reported. The Ghost of Terra departed from Tu Haven under full phase shift concealment and began the journey toward Sector 12. The trip would take 3 days through hyperspace, followed by careful infiltration of the Kepler-7 system while avoiding detection by the Dominion garrison. Captain Do Hyun used the travel time to study detailed intelligence about the mining colony and plan every aspect of the rescue operation. Admiral Kai Min received the classified historical records he had requested and discovered information that shattered his understanding of human history under Dominion rule. The records revealed that human resistance had continued for decades after the official conquest, with numerous underground facilities and hidden colonies that had never been located or destroyed. The final human stronghold had supposedly been eliminated 50 years ago, but the records contained gaps and inconsistencies that suggested the truth was more complex. Most disturbing of all were reports of advanced human research facilities that had been developing new technologies based on salvaged alien equipment. The Dominion military had dismissed these projects as primitive attempts to copy superior alien science, but the Phantom vessel's capabilities suggested that human scientists had succeeded in creating something entirely new and dangerous. Intelligence. Officer Vextar brought Admiral Kaimin additional evidence that supported the human origin theory. Analysis of the Phantom vessel's attack patterns shows tactical thinking that's consistent with human military doctrine from the pre-conquest period, he reported. The emphasis on psychological warfare and hit-and-run tactics matches historical human resistance strategies. The implications were staggering because they suggested that the Dominion had been fighting an enemy that understood their psychology and tactical preferences better than they understood themselves. Humans had spent 2 centuries studying Dominion technology and military doctrine while developing countermeasures and strategies specifically designed to exploit their oppressors' weaknesses. Admiral Kai Min realized that the Phantom vessel represented More than just advanced technology, it was the product of centuries of careful planning and preparation by a species that had never accepted defeat. While the Dominion had grown complacent with their dominance over the galaxy, humans had been working in secret to develop the tools and strategies necessary to fight back. The Ghost of Terra emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 7th system and began careful surveillance of the Dominion garrison protecting the mining colony. Captain Do-hyun studied the enemy deployment through phase-shifted sensors, while his crew prepared for their most important mission yet. Success would mean rescuing 300 enslaved humans and dealing a significant blow to Dominion mining operations, but failure could mean the destruction of the only free human ship in the galaxy. Garrison consists of 8 ships in standard defensive formation around the planet, Navigation Officer Hai-jin reported. Ground-based sensors show extensive security installations protecting the mining complex, but I'm detecting gaps in coverage that we could exploit during the shift change periods. Dr. Na-young monitored the phase shift generators as they prepared for atmospheric entry. All systems are operating within normal parameters, she announced. We're ready to begin final approach to the planetary surface. Captain Do-hyun gave the order to begin the rescue operation and felt the weight of responsibility for not just his crew, but for every human slave still suffering under Dominion control throughout the galaxy. The Ghost of Terra represented hope for an entire species, and that hope was about to be tested in the most dangerous mission they had ever attempted. The Ghost of Terra descended through the atmosphere of Kepler 7th, like a ghost passing through walls, its phase-shifted hull invisible to the planet's defense sensors. Captain Do-hyun watched the mining complex grow larger on the main display. As they approached the surface, where 300 human slaves had spent their entire lives in underground tunnels digging for rare minerals that powered Dominion technology. Engineer So-jin monitored the phase-shift generators as they strained to maintain dimensional displacement in the planet's heavy gravity field. Phase stability holding at 87%, she reported with tension in her voice. We have approximately 90 minutes before the quantum resonance chambers require cooldown. The landing zone was a rocky plateau 2 kilometers from the main mining facility, chosen because it provided cover from ground-based sensors while remaining close enough for a rapid extraction operation. Captain Do-hyun had studied the security patterns for weeks and identified a 20-minute window during the night shift change when most of the automated defenses would be offline for routine maintenance. Dr. Na-young activated the ship's advanced scanning systems to map the underground tunnel networks where the human slaves lived and worked. I'm detecting 312 human life signs concentrated in the lower levels of the mining complex, she reported. The thermal signatures suggest they're housed in cramped barracks with minimal life support systems. The conditions were exactly what Captain Do-hyun had expected after 2 centuries of Dominion rule. But seeing the evidence still filled him with anger at the systematic cruelty that had kept his people enslaved for so long. Every human on this planet had been born into bondage and taught to believe that freedom was impossible, but today they would learn that their species had never stopped fighting. Weapons specialist Ji-woo configured the phase cannons for precision strikes against the security installations protecting the mining complex. I can disable the guard towers and automated defense systems without causing structural damage to the slave quarters, he reported. The phase energy will overload their power systems while leaving the tunnel supports intact. Communications. Officer Tae-ho established contact with hidden resistance cells that intelligence suggested might exist among the slave population. Using carefully coded transmissions on old human frequencies, he broadcast a simple message that identified the Ghost of Terra as a liberation force. The response came within minutes, a weak signal from deep underground confirming that some of the slaves were ready to help with their own rescue. The assault began exactly at midnight, when the mining complex's security systems went offline for their scheduled maintenance cycle. The Ghost of Terra rose from its hiding place and struck the guard installations with surgical precision, disabling defensive weapons and sensor arrays without alerting the sleeping garrison in orbit above the planet. Captain Do-hyun led a team of 6 crew members into the mining complex through service tunnels that the resistance contacts had identified as unguarded. The underground facility was a maze of narrow passages carved from solid rock, barely wide enough for a single person and lit by dim emergency lighting that cast eerie shadows on the walls. The human slaves they encountered in the tunnels were thin and pale from years of malnutrition and lack of sunlight, but their eyes showed spark of hope when they realized that their rescuers were human too. Word spread quickly through the underground barracks that free humans had come to liberate them from Dominion control. Medical Officer Wu Sung worked frantically to treat slaves who were too sick or injured to move under their own power. Many of the prisoners suffered from lung diseases caused by breathing toxic dust in the mines, while others had been crippled by industrial accidents and left to die without proper medical care. Every person they saved was a victory against the Dominion's systematic attempt to destroy human dignity and spirit. The evacuation proceeded with desperate efficiency as hundreds of slaves moved through the tunnel networks toward extraction points, where the Ghost of Terra waited. Captain Do-hyun coordinated the operation while monitoring for signs that the Dominion garrison had detected their activities. The orbital ships remained in standard defensive positions, apparently unaware that their most valuable prisoners were escaping right beneath their feet. Dr. Ne Young discovered something unexpected in the mining complex's computer systems. Detailed records of 17 other slave colonies throughout Dominion space, complete with population numbers, security arrangements, and shipping schedules. The intelligence was invaluable for planning future liberation missions, but it also revealed the true scope of human suffering under alien rule. Engineer So-jin called from the ship with urgent warnings about the phase shift generators. Quantum resonance stability has dropped to 62%, she reported over the communication link. We need to begin final extraction within 15 minutes or risk complete system failure. The timing was critical because 300 people could not be evacuated in 15 minutes using normal procedures, but Captain Do-hyun had prepared for this contingency. The Ghost of Terra's cargo bays had been reconfigured to hold large numbers of passengers in emergency conditions, and phase technology allowed them to transport people directly through solid matter without using conventional doors or ramps. The final phase of the operation involved the most dangerous gamble yet attempted with their phase technology. Dr. Ne-young activated a localized dimensional field that temporarily shifted sections of the mining complex into the same phase space as the Ghost of Terra. For exactly 60 seconds, the ship and the underground facility existed in the same dimensional state, allowing 300 slaves to step directly through the tunnel walls into the ship's cargo bays. The phase transfer was successful, but left the quantum generators operating far beyond safe parameters. As soon as the last slave was aboard, Captain Do-hyun ordered immediate departure, while Engineer So-jin worked desperately to stabilize the failing systems. The Ghost of Terra lifted off from Kepler's 7th, just as the Dominion garrison finally realized that something was wrong at the mining facility. 8 ships moving to intercept, Navigation Officer Hye-jin reported as she plotted an escape course. They're launching fighters and charging weapons for planetary bombardment. Captain Do-hyun made the decision to reveal their presence to the enemy garrison rather than risk the lives of the rescued slaves by attempting a stealthy escape with failing phase generators. The Ghost of Terra appeared on every sensor screen in the Dominion fleet as it climbed toward orbit, finally giving Admiral Kaimin's forces their first clear look at the phantom vessel that had terrorized them for months. The enemy ships opened fire with everything they had, but their weapons passed harmlessly through the Ghost of Terra's phase-shifted hull. Captain Do-hyun ordered a demonstration that would ensure the story of this rescue spread throughout the Dominion fleet. Weapons specialist Ji-woo targeted the flagship of the garrison and fired a single-phase cannon burst that disabled every system on the ship without killing the crew. Communications Officer Tae-ho broadcast a message on all Dominion frequencies as the Ghost of Terra escaped into hyperspace. This is the Ghost of Terra speaking to all Dominion forces. Humanity is not extinct. We have returned to liberate our people and reclaim our freedom. The Phantom War has begun. Admiral Kai-min received reports of the Kepler 7 incident with a mixture of horror and grudging respect for an enemy that had just accomplished the impossible. A single human ship had penetrated deep into Dominion space, rescued 300 slaves from a heavily fortified facility, and escaped without suffering any damage. The implications were terrifying because they proved that no Dominion installation was safe from attack. The rescued slaves aboard the Ghost of Terra were taken to Haven where they received medical treatment and learned the truth about humanity's survival and resistance against Dominion rule. Many of them had skills and knowledge that would be invaluable for future operations, while others simply represented the growing population of free humans who could help build a new civilization. Dr. Na Young began analyzing the intelligence gathered from the mining facility's computers, identifying targets for future liberation missions, and mapping the network of slave colonies throughout Dominion space. The data revealed that over 50,000 humans still lived in bondage across the galaxy, all of them waiting for rescue by people they didn't even know existed. Captain Do Hyun addressed his expanded crew and the rescued slaves in the main assembly hall of the Haven facility. "Today we proved that the Dominion is not invincible," he announced. "We rescued 300 people and showed the galaxy that humanity refuses to be conquered. This is just the beginning of our war for freedom." Engineer So Jin worked around the clock to repair the phase shift generators while designing improvements that would allow them to handle the stress of future rescue operations. The technology that made their victories possible required constant refinement and upgrade, but each successful mission provided new insights into the capabilities and limitations of dimensional manipulation.